Sometimes there was the earthy smell of damp concrete after rain. Other days it was sawdust from one of Mr. Blue's projects or the clean scent of bleach after the floor had been mopped. Dust, old carpet, microwave popcorn. It was funny, the things people remembered. It wasn't birthdays, report cards, or Christmas presents didn't stick. The smell of a basement. The sound of a movie playing on a television that was probably older than both of them. The feeling of sitting cross-legged on the floor while Tate argued that they should watch a different movie, even though they both knew they were going to end up watching the same one they always watched. Noah closed his eyes. For a moment he was 8 years old again. Back before everything became complicated. Back before people started growing apart. Back before he learned that nothing stayed the same forever. There had been a time when Tate was simply there. Tate wasn't his buddy, his brother, or his companion. Not his brother. Not his companion. Not a label. Just Tate. The person who occupied every important memory Noah had from childhood. From the ages of 4 to 13, they had been inseparable. Adults used words like close. Close didn't begin to describe it. They were a match set. If one was present, the other usually wasn't far away. Their parents joked that they should have bought half as many birthday presents because whatever boy received a gift eventually ended up being shared by the other anyway. Summer mornings belonged to them. Rainy afternoons belonged to them. Snow days belonged to them. Entire years belonged to them. Noah could remember endless afternoons stretched out before them like roads that would never end. Back then time moved differently. A single Saturday felt longer than an entire month did now. There was always another game to invent. Another movie to watch. Another ridiculous argument about something that would be forgotten 20 minutes later. The basement had been their kingdom, Tate's bedroom had been their fortress. Neither of them actually owned it, but that never mattered. It was theirs. The old couch. The television. The blankets were piled in the corner. The shelves are packed with movies. That was where they spent countless weekends. Watching action movies they were probably too young to watch. They would throw popcorn at each other whenever one of them got bored. Competing to see who could throw a piece into the other's mouth from farther away. Laughing so hard that soda came out of their noses. The kind of laughter that hurt. The kind that left your stomach aching. The kind that seemed impossible to lose. Noah missed that laughter. He missed it more than he liked admitting. Back then, neither of them prioritized anyone over the other. Not because they had made some promise. Because it never occurred to them to do otherwise. When Noah found something exciting, Tate was the first person he wanted to tell. When Tate had an idea, Noah was automatically included. Their lives overlapped so completely that separating one from the other felt impossible. Adults would ask where Tate was. Noah always knew. Adults would ask where Noah was. Tate was always there. It was simply how things worked. Neither of them questioned it. Why would they? Children rarely imagine that the things they love can disappear. They assume tomorrow will look like today. And next year will look like this year. And the people sitting beside them will always be sitting beside them. Noah had believed that. Completely. Absolutely. With all the certainty only a child could possess. Sometimes they would stay awake long after they were supposed to be asleep. The basement lights turned off. The glow from the television casts shadows across the room. Talking about everything and nothing. What superpowers would they choose? What jobs did they want? Whether aliens existed. Whether ghosts were real. Who would survive longest during a zombie apocalypse? The important conversations of childhood. Neither of them realized they were creating memories. They were simply living them. That was the cruel thing about memories. You never recognized them while they were happening. Only years later. Only after they were gone. Only after you found yourself wishing for one more ordinary day. One more movie. One more stupid argument. One more handful of popcorn flying through the air. One more afternoon where the biggest problem in the world was deciding what to watch next. Noah opened his eyes. The memory lingered. Warm. Painful. Beautiful. He could still see Tate sitting on the floor of that basement. Could still hear his laugh. could still remember the certainty that no matter what happened tomorrow, Tate would be there. At 4 years old, that certainty felt eternal. At 13 years old, it still felt eternal. Noah didn't know then that growing up had a way of changing people. He didn't know friendships or relationships could bend under the weight of time. He didn't know that one day he would find himself looking backward more often than forward. Most of all, he didn't know that some of the happiest moments of his life were already behind him. Back then, all he knew was that Tate was waiting downstairs with a bowl of popcorn and a terrible movie neither of them would admit they liked. And for Noah, that was enough. This works well as the opening pages of a novel because it establishes Noah's nostalgia, his attachment to Tate, and the sense of loss that will likely drive the story forward. Here's a version that incorporates all of those elements. Noah repeatedly trying to define their relationship, Tate rejecting labels like friend or buddy, and Tate admitting that he would not want another child stepping into the space he and Noah shared. Noah was 5 years old when he first asked. They were sitting on the basement floor surrounded by toys, crayons, and a bowl of popcorn that neither of them had touched in several minutes.
Tate. What are we?
Tate looked up from the picture he was drawing.
What do you mean?
Noah shrugged. I don't know. He thought for a second. Are we friends?
Tate immediately shook his head.
No. Noah blinked. No. No. Why not? Tate returned to his drawing. Because you're not my friend. The answer should have sounded mean. Instead, it sounded matter-of-fact. As if Tate were pointing out that the sky was blue. Noah frowned. Then are we buddies? No. What about best friends?
Tate shook his head again.
No. Noah groaned. Then what are we?
Tate shrugged.
We're Noah and Tate. That's not an answer.
It is.
No, it isn't. Tate laughed. To him, it made perfect sense. To Noah, it made none. Over the next several years, the conversation would repeat itself dozens of times. Sometimes in the basement. Sometimes during long car rides. Sometimes while lying awake during sleepovers. Sometimes while sharing popcorn during movies. The answers never changed. Tate, are we friends? No. Why not? Because we're not. Then what are we? We're Noah and Tate. At 7 years old, Noah tried again. Are we best friends? No. Why? Because that's too small. Noah stared at him. Too small. Tate nodded. Best friend is just a label. What's wrong with labels? Tate thought about it. Then he shrugged. People start expecting things. What things? I don't know. Tate lay back on the carpet.
They expect you to fit.
Fit what? The label. Noah didn't understand.
Tate wasn't sure he understood either.
Not completely. Only that every label felt wrong. Friend. Buddy. Best friend. None of them seemed big enough. None of them seemed accurate. By the time they were 9, Noah had accepted that asking the question would never produce a normal answer. That didn't stop him from asking.
Tate.
What? If we're not friends, what are we? Tate smiled. I told you. Noah and Tate.
Yes.
That's not helpful.
It is to me.
Noah rolled his eyes. Then he asked the question that finally made Tate sit up. What if another kid wanted to hang out with us? Tate frowned.
What do you mean?
I don't know. Noah shrugged. What if somebody wanted to watch movies with us or play games with us? Tate looked genuinely uncomfortable. The idea seemed to bother him a lot. Yeah.
Tate considered that. Then he shook his head.
No. Noah looked surprised.
Really?
Yeah. Why?
Tate searched for the words.
Because at 9 years old, some feelings were difficult to explain. Finally he said, because that's ours.
What is? This.
He gestured around them.
The basement. The movies. The games.
The conversations. The hours spent doing absolutely nothing together. That's ours. Noah stared at him. What if they were nice? I don't care. What if they wanted to be friends?
Tate shrugged. They can be your friend. They can't be yours.
No. Why not? Tate looked at him as though the answer were obvious. Because you're already here. Noah laughed.
That doesn't make any sense. It makes perfect sense.
No, it doesn't.
Tate smiled. You're supposed to be here.
The words hung in the air. Simple.
Certain.
Uncomplicated. As if Tate had never questioned it for a second. Years later, Noah would realize that Tate wasn't being possessive. At least not entirely. Tate simply viewed what existed between them as something unique. Something that couldn't be duplicated. Something that couldn't be replaced. And because of that, he never wanted to define it. The moment you define something, people attached expectations to it.
Rules. Responsibilities. Roles. Limitations. Tate hated limitations.
If we call it something, he told Noah one night when they were 12, people start telling us what it's supposed to look like. So then we're stuck. Noah frowned. Stuck how? Stuck being whatever they think that word means. Noah considered that. And if we don't define it? Tate smiled. Then we can just be whatever we are. What if nobody understands?
Tate shrugged.
They don't have to. Noah laughed. You really are weird. Probably. Tate tossed a piece of popcorn into his mouth. Then he glanced at Noah. The smile faded into something softer. Something more sincere.
Besides.
What? I like what we are. Noah waited. Tate grinned. Even if nobody has a word for it. And somehow, despite years of trying, Noah never found a better answer than that.
The basement shook.
Not enough to cause any real damage, but enough that anyone upstairs would have heard the repeated thumps coming from below. 10-year-old Tate considered that a sign he was winning. Noah disagreed. Get off. No.
Tate.
Nope. The two boys rolled across the worn carpet, laughing so hard neither could breathe properly. The old basement rug bunched beneath them as elbows and knees slid across the floor. For nearly 20 minutes they had been wrestling. Not real wrestling. The kind children invented. A chaotic combination of tackles, ambushes, dramatic declarations of victory, and completely made-up rules that changed whenever one of them started losing. At the moment Tate had Noah pinned.
Mostly.
Noah was face down on the carpet with Tate sitting triumphantly on his back. The scratchy carpet fuzz tickled Noah's nose. I can't breathe, Noah announced dramatically. That's unfortunate.
Tate. Yes.
Get off. No. Noah groaned. The groan quickly turned into a yelp. Tate had started tickling him. No.
Yes. Tate.
Tate grinned. Years later, Noah would remember that grin. The grin that usually meant trouble. The grin that appeared whenever Tate knew he was winning. Noah squirmed violently. Tate only laughed harder. You surrender. No. Another round of tickling. Noah's laughter echoed throughout the basement.
Tate.
Do you surrender?
You cheated. I didn't cheat. You absolutely cheated.
Tate gasped in mock outrage. I am offended by that accusation. You sat on me. That's called strategy. That's called cheating. It's only cheating because you're losing. Noah attempted to throw Tate off. The effort lasted approximately 3 seconds. Then Tate pinned him again. I win. You do not. I definitely do.
You cheated.
I definitely didn't. Noah buried his face deeper into the carpet. The basement smelled faintly of dust, old wood, and popcorn from the movie they had abandoned earlier. Sunlight filtered through the small basement windows near the ceiling. Neither of them had noticed how much time had passed. This was how most afternoons went. A movie would start. A game would begin. Someone would make a joke. And somehow it would evolve into complete chaos. Neither of them ever seemed to run out of ways to entertain themselves. Tate reached down and ruffled Noah's hair. Noah immediately tried to bite his hand. Ow! Serves you right. You actually bit me. You deserved it. Tate laughed. Then, bang! The basement door slammed open. Both boys froze. Heavy footsteps immediately followed. Thump, thump, thump. Tate groaned. Dad found us. Noah laughed. We're dead. Definitely dead. The footsteps continued down the stairs. Tate prepared himself for a lecture about roughhousing inside the house. Instead, a familiar voice called out. Who's down here? Both boys looked toward the staircase. Uncle Joey appeared at the bottom step. He stopped and stared. The whole upstairs is shaking. Tate immediately pointed at Noah. It was him. It was not. It absolutely was. You tackled me. You tackled me first. Joey folded his arms. I see. Neither boy looked remotely sorry. In fact, both were still trying not to laugh. Sorry, Tate said. We were having fun. We were wrestling, Noah added. And I won. You cheated, Noah said immediately. I did not. You absolutely did. I used superior tactics. You sat on me. Exactly. Joey shook his head. The smile tugging at the corner of his mouth suggested he wasn't particularly angry. He walked over and pulled Noah to his feet. Dust and carpet fuzz clung stubbornly to Noah's shirt and jeans. Joey brushed some of it away. Out of all the places you two could wrestle, Joey said, you picked the dirtiest floor in the house. Tate grinned. It's a good floor. It's carpet from 1943. Exactly. Joey laughed despite himself. Why don't you both go outside? The boys exchanged a look. No. Joey blinked. No. We like it down here, Tate said. You could ride your bikes. No. Play basketball. No. Go to the park. No. Joey looked at Noah. Do you ever disagree with him? Sometimes. When? Noah thought for a moment. Then shrugged. I don't remember. Tate looked pleased with that answer. Joey sighed dramatically. I should have known. Then he looked between them. The two boys were still standing shoulder to shoulder, both covered in dust, both grinning. Completely content. Joey shook his head. Well, at least try not to bring the house down. No promises, Tate said. And judging by the grin on his face, he meant it. Joey shook his head as he looked at the two boys. Dust clung to their clothes. Their hair was a mess. The carpet looked like it had barely survived whatever wrestling match had just taken place. Neither of them appeared remotely concerned. Joey laughed. You two are impossible. Tate grinned. I won. You cheated, Noah immediately replied. I didn't. You sat on me. That's called skill. That's called cheating. Joey held up a hand. I'm not getting involved. Both boys immediately began talking over each other. He cheated. I did not. He absolutely did. I absolutely didn't. Joey ignored them. Instead, he reached over and ruffled Noah's blonde hair until it stood up in every direction. All right, little nephew. Noah swatted at his hand. Hey. Play nicely. Noah tried to smooth his hair back down. It was his fault. It was not. It was. It wasn't. Joey laughed again. Then he reached over and gently tugged on Tate's ear. Ow. That didn't hurt. It emotionally hurt. Joey rolled his eyes. I see where you get it from. Tate grinned. Joey leaned down and kissed him on the cheek. Tate immediately wiped at the spot with exaggerated disgust. Oh, stop. I'm traumatized. You're dramatic. That's what trauma does. Noah burst out laughing. Joey pointed at both of them. Listen carefully. Neither boy looked particularly concerned. Your parents are out at the movies tonight. Tate nodded. I know. So I'm in charge. Tate immediately groaned. Which means, Joey continued, my job is making sure neither of you manages to destroy the house. We weren't destroying the house. The ceiling was literally shaking. That's an exaggeration. It is not. Tate looked unconvinced. Joey folded his arms. So. He looked directly at them. Stay out of trouble. The boys exchanged a glance. Neither made any promises. Joey narrowed his eyes. That silence worries me. We'll try, Noah offered. That's somehow even more concerning.
Tate laughed. Joey sighed dramatically. Then a smile appeared on his face.
I'll tell you what.
Both boys looked up.
If you're good.
Tate immediately interrupted.
Define good.
Joey pointed a finger at him.
That's exactly the kind of question someone asks when they're planning to be bad.
Noah laughed.
Tate looked proud of himself.
Joey continued.
If you're good, maybe after dinner, I'll take both of you out for ice cream.
The effect was immediate. Both boys straightened.
I can be good.
So can I.
Remarkable, Joey said. A miracle. We were always good.
No.
We weren't.
No.
We weren't.
Joey shook his head.
You two nearly caused an earthquake. It wasn't that bad.
The upstairs floor disagrees. He started toward the stairs.
Halfway there, he stopped and pointed at them one last time. And stopped shaking the top of the house. No promises, Tate called.
Tate.
We'll try.
Better. Joey continued up the stairs. The wooden steps creaked beneath his feet.
A few seconds later, the basement door closed with a solid click. The house became quiet again. For several moments, neither boy moved.
Then Noah looked at Tate.
Do you think he'll actually get us ice cream? Tate thought about it.
Probably. Then maybe we should behave.
Tate considered that possibility.
For nearly 3 seconds. Then he grinned.
Or. Noah immediately started laughing.
Oh no.
Or, Tate repeated, already dropping into a wrestling stance, we could finish determining who won.
You cheated.
I did not.
You absolutely did.
Tate lunged. Noah dodged. And within seconds, the basement was shaking all over again. Tate paused mid-wrestle, considering his next move with the seriousness of someone planning something far more important than a 10-year-old could reasonably justify. Then he stuck his finger in his own mouth. Noah stopped laughing for half a second.
Tate, what are you doing?
Tate didn't answer. He just pulled his finger back out, now thoroughly wet, and looked at it like he was inspecting a weapon.
Nope, Noah said immediately. Nope, don't. Too late. Tate jabbed the damp finger straight into Noah's ear.
Noah erupted.
Tate.
He twisted on the carpet, squealing and laughing at the same time, rolling away while trying to shove Tate off him.
Tate immediately burst out laughing too.
It works, he shouted.
No, it does not work.
It totally works.
It's disgusting.
Effective though.
No.
The two of them collapsed into another rolling tangle on the living room floor, limbs flailing, laughter bouncing off the walls. From the armchair, Joey slowly lowered his newspaper. He stared at them for a long moment. Then sighed. All right, he said, tone flat, but the irritation didn't quite land as anger. It came out more like resigned comedy.
Neither boy even looked up.
"Tate," Noah yelled, still squirming. "I'm winning," Tate announced proudly. "You are absolutely not winning." Joey folded the newspaper all the way shut. "All right," he repeated louder this time. That got their attention. Both boys froze mid-wrestle. Joey stood, walked over, and without much ceremony grabbed Tate by the back of his shirt.
"Hey!"
Tate's feet left the ground immediately, kicking wildly. "Put me down." "Absolutely not." A second later, Joey lowered him onto his lap. Tate kept squirming like a fish that had just discovered gravity was optional. "I'm fine," Tate protested. "I don't need containment." "You're vibrating," Joey said. "I'm active." "You're ricocheting off the carpet." Tate wriggled harder anyway. Across the room, Noah was still catching his breath, blonde hair sticking up in every direction. Tate pointed at him. "I just want to have fun," he said. "You are having fun," Joey replied. "Not enough fun." Joey gave him a look. Then Tate leaned slightly, still half-pinned on Joey's lap, and gestured toward Noah. "And Blondie over there is no challenger," he declared. "He's terrible at wrestling." Noah sat up instantly. "I heard that."
Tate grinned.
"It's true." "No, it's not. You got ear attacked." "That doesn't count." "It counted emotionally." Joey rubbed his face with one hand. "Both of you lower your volume." Tate immediately whispered loudly. "I am being quiet." No, you're not, Joey said. Noah pointed at Tate. He cheats. I strategize. You put saliva in my ear. A tactical decision. That's not wrestling. It is in my world. Joey exhaled slowly, then tightened his grip on Tate's shirt as the boy tried to slide off his lap again. Nope. Tate flopped back dramatically. This is oppression. This is supervision. I didn't consent. You're 10. Exactly, I lack rights. Noah laughed so hard he fell back onto the carpet again. Joey looked between them, then finally shook his head. The annoyance never fully arrived. It kept dissolving into amusement instead. Next person to scream, he said, is going to sit right here next to Tate. Both boys immediately quieted for exactly 2 seconds. Then Tate whispered, I could take him. No, Joey said instantly. Noah grinned. Oh, you want to try? Tate wiggled again. Joey sighed. The living room filled once more with the sound of laughter building back up, unstoppable as ever. And Joey, despite himself, let it continue. The front door opened with a familiar burst of sound, keys, footsteps, and the low hum of voices carrying in from outside. Tim and Julia stepped into the house like they already knew what they were walking into. Tim was holding a grocery bag that clearly wasn't groceries anymore. Ice cream containers peeked out from the top, condensation already forming on the plastic. Julia followed behind him, laughing as she shut the door with her foot. Joey called it, Tim said. He always calls it, Julia replied. From the living room came the unmistakable sound of chaos. Laughter. A crash of movement on the carpet. And Tate's voice, far too loud to be considered indoor appropriate. We're fine. Noah immediately followed it. He's lying. Julia raised an eyebrow as they walked further inside. I don't think fine sounds like that, she said. Tim chuckled. Depends on the household. Joey appeared from the living room doorway, looking exactly like someone who had accepted responsibility for 2 hurricane-level children and lost the argument. They're alive, he said. That's always your opening statement, Julia replied. It's the most important one. From the living room floor, Tate and Noah were still engaged in what could generously be called wrestling and less generously be called controlled destruction. The carpet was already slightly rumpled from their earlier battle. Tate, sweaty and grinning, suddenly grabbed the hem of his shirt. Too hot, he declared. Before anyone could react, he yanked it off and flung it across the room. Hey, Noah protested. The shirt flew in a dramatic arc through the air. It landed directly on Noah's face. For a second there was silence. Then, Noah screamed. He flailed, grabbing at the damp fabric as it slid over his head and down his face. Get it off, get it off. Tate burst out laughing immediately. That was perfect. It's disgusting, Noah yelled, finally ripping the shirt away. It's called strategy. That's not strategy, that's hygiene violation. Tim stopped in the doorway, watching the scene unfold with quiet amusement. Julia crossed her arms. I see nothing has changed, she said. Joey sighed behind them. Nope. Tate rolled onto his back, still laughing, completely unbothered by the chaos he had just created. Noah sat up, hair even messier now, shirt clutched in his hands like evidence in a crime. He started it. I finished it, Tate said proudly. You assaulted me with clothing. That's not a real charge. Tim lifted the bag slightly. I brought reinforcements, he announced. At that both boys paused. Ice cream always had a way of resetting reality. Even for them. Julia smiled. Joey called us halfway through the grocery store, she said, something about minor structural shaking in the house. Joey raised a hand. I may have exaggerated slightly. You said the ceiling was vibrating, Tim replied. It was slightly vibrating. Tate immediately pointed at Noah. He's the reason. No, I'm not. You absolutely are. Julia stepped further into the room, looking between them. So, she said calmly, who won? Both boys answered at the same time. I did. Silence. Then Julia laughed. Of course you did. Joey leaned back against the doorway. Don't encourage them. Tim walked toward the kitchen with the ice cream. Too late. Tate had already rolled back toward Noah, grinning again as the earlier chaos had never happened. Rematch later. No, Noah said immediately. Yes, Tate replied. Julia shook her head as she followed Tim. From the kitchen came the sound of the freezer opening. And in the living room, the wrestling match, like always, seemed ready to start all over again. The ice cream carton was still sitting on the kitchen counter when Tim reached into his jacket like he had been saving the moment for later. Tate and Noah immediately stopped moving. That alone was unusual. Even Joey looked up from where he had been leaning against the doorway. Tim pulled out two neatly wrapped packages. One small, one noticeably larger. Tate's eyes locked onto the smaller one instantly. Noah noticed. So predictable, Noah muttered. Excuse me, Tate shot back. Tim ignored them both for a second, holding the gifts out with a faint smile. I picked these up at the airport, he said, on the way through Denver yesterday. Julia leaned against the counter, watching with amusement. You bought them at an airport, she asked. It was a long layover, Tim replied, and I saw these and thought of them. Tate stepped forward first, bouncing slightly on his heels. Which one's mine? Tim didn't even hesitate. He handed Tate the smaller wrapped box. Tate immediately looked offended. I don't like the size of this. That's not how gifts work, Joey said. Tate turned the box over suspiciously. It feels small. It is small, Noah said. Don't help him, Tate snapped. Tim laughed and then held the larger box out toward Noah. And this one's yours. Noah took it carefully, almost like he didn't trust it. That's definitely heavier, Noah said. Obviously, Tate muttered. Open them, Tim said, stepping back. That was all it took. Tate immediately tore into the paper with zero patience. Noah was slower, peeling at the edges carefully like he was trying not to break whatever was inside. Tate got his open first. He stared at it. Then blinked. A pause. It's a model plane. Tim nodded. Fighter jet, he corrected. Tate lifted it slightly. It was sleek, detailed, and clearly meant for display or assembly. Tate's expression slowly shifted from confusion to reluctant approval. Okay, he said. Joey smirked. That's it. Tate looked down at it again. It's actually kind of cool. Noah, meanwhile, finally got his box open. Inside was a larger set, carefully packed, heavier, more complex. A detailed build kit with multiple parts, instructions, and what looked like a scale model of something far more intricate. Noah stared at it for a long moment. Then looked up. This is complicated. Tim grinned. I figured you like that. Tate immediately leaned over. Is he better? No, Noah said automatically. Yes, Tate countered. No. It has more pieces. That doesn't make it better. It makes it more fun. Noah held it closer to his chest. I didn't ask for fun, I asked for victory. Julia laughed softly. Joey crossed his arms. You two argue even when you're being given gifts. That's because it's important, Tate said seriously. Tim sat down at the kitchen table, clearly entertained. So he said you like them. Tate nodded once. Yeah. Noah hesitated, then nodded too. Yeah. Tate immediately pointed at Noah's box. I still think mine is cooler. No one asked you. I'm telling you anyway. Joey sighed. Of course you are. Tate grinned and held up his fighter jet like a trophy. Noah looked down at his kit again, already turning it over in his hands, trying to figure out where to start. For a moment the wrestling stopped. The noise softened. And the house briefly settled into something quieter, still full of energy, but now focused on something new to break, build, and argue about all over again. Thank you, Tate said immediately. Noah echoed him a beat later, already hugging Uncle Tim's leg without thinking about it. Tim chuckled and patted the blonde head gently. You're welcome. Joey stepped forward from the kitchen doorway, holding a long, narrow box tucked under his arm. I've got something for you too as well, he said. Tate's eyes lit up instantly. More presents. No, Joey said, just one each, don't get excited. That made Tate even more excited. Joey handed the long box to Noah first. For you. Noah took it carefully, turning it over once before starting to open it. Tate leaned in immediately. No fair, I want mine first. You always want everything first, Noah muttered. Because I'm faster. That's not a reason. It is in nature. Noah ignored him and finished unwrapping the paper. Inside was a book. A thick, older-looking edition with a worn but elegant cover. Noah paused. Joey watched him closely. It's a second edition of Great Expectations, Joey said. I know you like reading. I didn't get you the first edition because you're supposed to read books, not lock them in a glass case. This one has the same text, just without the museum rules attached. Noah ran his fingers lightly over the cover. Then looked up. This is really good, he said quietly. Joey nodded once. I figured you'd understand it better as you get older. Noah held it closer to his chest. Tate immediately leaned over. Is it boring? No, Noah said quickly. Yes, it is, Tate replied confidently. No, it's not. It looks like homework. It's a classic. That means old. It means important. Joey pointed at Tate. You don't get to judge books you haven't read. I already did, Tate said. Joey shook his head, amused. Open yours next, he said. Tate tore into his box immediately. Far less carefully than Noah. Paper flew. Tape gave way. Within seconds he froze. Well. Inside was a compact handgun, sleek, lightweight, with simple assembly and a beginner's manual tucked underneath. Tate lifted it out slowly. It's real, he asked. Yes, Joey said, but only if you don't use it without an adult present. What I'll do is we'll store it in your father's safe when adults aren't around, and as long as Terrence or I are in the room, we will let you handle it. Tate looked offended. I would never do it without you. Joey rubbed his forehead. Tate grinned. No promises. Noah flipped a page in his book already, half distracted. Tate looked between the gun and Noah. I think mine is cooler. Noah didn't look up. It's not. It shoots. My book contains entire worlds. Tate paused. Then shrugged. Mine still fires bullets. Joey exhaled, shaking his head. Of course it does. And just like that, the living room filled again with argument, excitement, and the beginning of something new to break, build, and obsess over, each in their own way. All right, Joey said, taking Tate's box carefully from the floor. Tate's eyes immediately tracked it. Hey, where are you going with that? I'm putting it upstairs for now, Joey said, in Terrence's cabinet. Tate frowned. A cabinet. A safe place, Joey corrected. You'll get it back tomorrow. Noah looked up from his book. Why can't he keep it? Joey paused at the bottom of the stairs. Because, he said, some things need to be handled properly before you start using them. Tate crossed his arms. That sounds like a no-fun rule. It's a don't break anything rule, Joey replied. He adjusted the box under his arm. I'll bring it back down tomorrow when it's light out, then I'll show both of you how to use it the right way. Tate immediately brightened. So I do get to use it. Yes, Joey said, but only after you understand it. Noah closed his book halfway. Understand what? Joey turned back toward them. Responsibility, he said simply. Both boys went quiet for a moment. That word always changed the tone of things when Joey used it. You don't just open something like this and go, Joey continued. You take care of it, you learn how it works, you make sure it stays safe, and you don't treat it like a toy just because it looks fun. Tate shifted slightly, suddenly more attentive. Noah watched him. Joey nodded once, satisfied they were listening. Anything worth using is worth respecting, he added. Then he lifted the box a little. I'll be right back. He headed up the stairs. The box disappeared with him into the hallway light. The house settled again. For a moment neither boy spoke. Then Tate leaned toward Noah. I'm still going to be better at it than you. Noah turned a page in his book. You don't even know what it is yet. I know enough. That's your problem, Noah said quietly. Tate grinned. No, it's not. And just like that, the quiet didn't last very long at all. Joey came back down the stairs about 5 minutes later. The house was quieter now, but not in a way that meant peace was guaranteed. With Tate and Noah, quiet usually meant planning. He stopped in the living room doorway and looked at both of them for a moment. Tate was sitting on the floor, still energized, legs crossed, impatiently bouncing his knee. Noah had gone back to his book, but his attention kept drifting upward. Joey cleared his throat. "All right," he said. Both boys looked up at once. His tone shifted, less casual now, more deliberate. "It's important you understand something," Joey continued. "This isn't a toy, it's a tool." Tate straightened slightly. Noah closed his book fully. Joey walked further into the room. "And tools aren't about fun first," he said. "They're about responsibility first." Tate opened his mouth, then thought better of it. Joey nodded as if acknowledging that hesitation. "You don't just pick something like this up and start using it," he said. "You learn it, you respect it, you understand what it can do if you're careless." He looked between them. "And you don't use it without an adult present, ever." Noah nodded slowly. Tate did too, though more reluctantly. Joey continued, his voice steady. "A lot of accidents happen because people think they already know enough," he said. "Or they rush, or they get excited and stop thinking." Tate frowned slightly at that. Joey softened his tone just a little. "That's why I'm showing you," he said, "because learning something the right way matters more than doing it fast." He folded his arms. "You won't always like waiting, you won't always like rules, but you'll understand them later." Tate leaned back slightly, absorbing that in his own way. Noah glanced at him, then back at Joey. Joey exhaled. "And for the record," he added, "this is exactly the kind of thing you don't touch alone, ever, not when you're curious, not when you're bored, not when you think no one is looking." The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then Joey's expression shifted back toward something lighter. "And no," he said, pointing between them, "that does not mean you get to argue about who would have figured it out faster." Tate immediately grinned. "I would have." "No," Noah said at the same time. Joey shook his head. "Of course you would start with that." But his voice carried something softer now. Not anger. Just certainty. And responsibility sitting quietly behind it. 2 hours later, after both boys had taken their turn aiming at a shooting target, Uncle Joey showed them how to clean the weapon and seal it in its case. Joey had decided instead of using live bullets they would use dummy rounds, so in case an accident happened there wouldn't be any long-lasting damage. "All right," Joey said, clapping his hands once as if to reset the entire mood of the room. "Enough serious talk and live practice." Both boys blinked at him. Tate was still mid-bounce on the lawn. Noah had one hand still resting on his book, like he wasn't sure whether reality had just shifted properly. Joey pointed toward the house. "Ice cream," he announced. That did it immediately. Tate sat up straight. Noah closed his book fully without hesitation. "Your parents should be home in the next hour or two," Joey added, "so grab a bowl and a spoon." Tate shot to his feet. "Can I have extra ice cream?" "No," Joey said instantly. That was fast. It was a practiced answer. Noah stood more calmly, already walking toward the house. Joey continued as they moved. "You'll both get 2 scoops." Tate stopped mid-step. "Only 2. "Yes. That's barely anything." "It's exactly enough." Tate frowned. Noah glanced over. 2 scoops is normal." Tate pointed at him. "You don't get to be the standard of normal." "I didn't ask to be." Joey walked into the kitchen behind them, opening the freezer with the ease of someone who knew exactly where everything was. "And," he added, "we don't want you having too much energy." Tate immediately lit up. "That sounds like a challenge." "It's not a challenge," Joey said. "It sounds like a challenge." "It's a warning." Noah leaned against the counter. "Too late," he muttered. Joey pulled out the ice cream tub and set it down. "You two already operate at maximum energy," he said. "If I let you go any higher, the house might file a complaint." Tate grinned. "The house loves us." "The house is afraid of you," Joey corrected. Noah smiled slightly at that. Joey grabbed 2 bowls from the cabinet. "One for Blondie," he said, pointing at Noah. "I have a name," Noah replied, laughing. "I know." "And one for the Chaos Engine," Joey continued, pointing at Tate. "I prefer creative energy source," Tate said proudly. "That's not a thing." "It should be." Joey scooped ice cream into both bowls with careful precision. Noah watched quietly. Tate watched impatiently. Each scoop landed with deliberate consistency. 2 each. Exactly as promised.
Joey handed them over. Eat, he said. Tate immediately took his bowl like it was a trophy. Noah followed more carefully, already looking for a spoon. They moved back into the living room. For a few minutes the wrestling stopped entirely. There was only the sound of spoons against bowls. And the rare, temporary peace that came when two very different boys were too busy eating ice cream to argue. Joey leaned against the kitchen doorway watching them. See, he said quietly. 2 scoops. Tate looked up. This is still a challenge. No, Joey said. It is, Tate insisted. Noah shook his head. It really isn't. Tate pointed at him. I'm going to prove it is. Joey sighed. And somewhere between the ice cream and the inevitable return of chaos, he accepted that peace in this house was always going to be temporary. Joey smiled as he lifted the ice cream tub from the counter. 2 scoops, he said, scooping carefully into each bowl, butterscotch. Tate immediately perked up. Wait, this is the good one. This is the only one I buy, Joey replied. Noah leaned closer, watching the spoon go in with suspicious focus. It's extra yellow, Noah observed. It's flavor, Joey corrected. Tate grinned. I like the yellow flavor. That's not a category, Noah muttered. It is now. Joey continued scooping with steady precision. You're getting 2 scoops because you both ate your asparagus and potatoes without being asked at dinner. Tate froze mid-breath. Noah looked up. That was a reward, Noah asked. Yes, Joey said. Tate blinked slowly, as if reprocessing the entire evening. We ate vegetables on purpose. Yes, Joey said again. Tate looked mildly offended at how simple that sounded. I thought that was just survival. Joey laughed under his breath. I think a reward is necessary, he said, even though good health is a major perk on its own. He gave Tate a light pat on the head as he handed him his bowl. Tate immediately leaned into it like it was an officially sanctioned victory. I accept this reward, Tate announced. You didn't earn a medal, Noah said. I earned ice cream, that's better. Noah looked down at his own bowl. He has a point, he admitted reluctantly. Tate pointed at him with his spoon. See, even Noah agrees. I did not agree, Noah said quickly. You did a little. I didn't. You hesitated. That's not agreement. Joey shook his head amused and leaned back against the counter. Eat before it melts, he said. Both boys immediately complied, though Tate, of course, made it look like a competitive event. Noah sat a little straighter, carefully taking his first bite like he was evaluating a serious case. Tate, meanwhile, had already decided it was the best ice cream he had ever been rewarded for eating vegetables. And Joey just watched them from the kitchen doorway, satisfied in the quiet way adults get when small victories actually work. At least for now. Uncle Tim set his ice cream bowl down on the counter with exaggerated care, like it was part dessert and part art project. From the grocery bag beside him, he pulled out 2 small containers. One held rainbow sprinkles. The other chopped peanuts. Tate immediately leaned forward. What are those? Enhancements, Tim said seriously. Joey snorted from the doorway. They're toppings. Same thing, Tim replied. He opened the sprinkles first, shaking a careful dusting across the butterscotch ice cream. Bright colors are scattered over the warm yellow surface. Then came the peanuts, lightly sprinkled, adding texture and crunch. Tate watched like this was an important scientific procedure. Noah, on the other hand, was already trying to decide whether his book or his ice cream required more attention. Never hurts, Tim said, stepping back to admire his work. Toppings never hurt. Tate immediately pointed at his bowl. I want mine upgraded. No, Joey said instantly. That was fast. It's another practiced answer. Tate frowned but accepted it anyway, already digging his spoon in. Tim wiped his hands and leaned against the counter, looking relaxed now that the ice cream crisis had been successfully managed. So, he said casually, I was thinking. Tate looked up immediately. That's dangerous. Tim laughed. Tomorrow there's the auto show in the city. Noah paused mid-bite. Tate's eyes lit up. Cars. Lots of them, Tim confirmed. Tate immediately straightened. Yes. Noah looked between them. Is it loud? Probably, Joey said. Tate looked offended. That makes it better. Tim smiled. I was planning on going in the morning. Thought I'd take whoever wants to come. Tate didn't even hesitate. Yes. Noah, still more cautious, looked at his ice cream. Are there snacks? Tim nodded. There are always snacks. Noah considered this. Then yes. Tate leaned toward him. We're going. I just said yes. I know I'm confirming teamwork. That's not how teamwork works. It is in my system. Tim chuckled, then took a sip of his drink. Tate suddenly tilted his head. Is it okay if I bring Noe? Noah looked up immediately. Tim looked between them, amused. Of course you can bring Noah, he said. Tate nodded like that was already decided. Good, because I wasn't going without him. Joey raised an eyebrow. That sounded less like permission and more like inevitability. Tate shrugged. It is. Noah sighed, but there was no real complaint in it. Tim smiled softly, watching the two of them settle into their usual rhythm, half argument, half attachment, completely inseparable even when they pretended otherwise. All right, Tim said, auto show tomorrow, deal. Tate lifted his spoon. Best day ever. Noah more quietly added. As long as there are snacks. And just like that, the plan was locked in. Noah's expression shifted, not dramatically, not in a way Tate would immediately notice, but something in his eyes softened, as if the argument had briefly stopped mattering in the way it had a second ago. Because something else had surfaced. Not louder than the moment. Just older. He blinked once slowly. And suddenly he wasn't fully in the room anymore. He was 4 years old again. Small hands, unsteady balance. The world is still too big and too loud to make sense of consistently shaped sounds. And there was Tate, also 4, just as unformed in his way, sitting nearby like the world had not yet told him who he was supposed to be. Noah remembered it in fragments, the way early childhood memories don't play like films but like sensations. Sunlight on carpet. The smell of something sweet baking in another room. The soft chaos of being too young to understand anything except tone and closeness. And Tate trying to say his name. No, A pause. Tate's face scrunched in concentration, like the word itself was a puzzle that refused to behave. No. It came out wrong in the exact way all first words do when they're trying to become real. Noe. Silence followed it. Not awkward, not heavy. Just paused. Then Talia's laugh, warm, surprised, delighted in the way adults are when they witness something unintentionally perfect. Noe, she repeated, amused. Tate blinked at her, then at Noah, as if waiting for correction, punishment, or rejection. But none came. Noah, at 4 years old, had just looked back at him. Not offended. Not corrected. Just accepting it. Because at 4, he didn't yet understand identity as something fragile enough to defend. He only understood that the sound Tate made when he tried to reach him was his name now. Noe, Tate tried again, quieter this time, as if testing whether it would break. It didn't. And somehow, through repetition, through childhood logic that is more emotional than linguistic, it stuck. Not officially. Not written anywhere. Just living in the way Tate said it when he wanted him. Noe. The memory didn't feel distant now. It felt close. Like it had been waiting behind everything else they had ever become. Noah came back to the present slowly. The room was the same. Tate was still there. But the emotional temperature between them had changed, not because the argument had ended, but because something underneath it had shifted. Noah exhaled quietly through his nose, almost like he was grounding himself in his body again. Then softer than before he spoke. I just remembered something, he said. Not as a pivot away from the conversation, but as something that belonged inside it. Tate looked at him, still tense, still carrying the weight of everything they'd been discussing. Noah's voice softened further. When we were kids, he said, you couldn't say my name properly. A faint, almost invisible smile touched his mouth. And you said Noe instead. He paused, letting the memory sit between them like something tangible. And you didn't drop it. Another pause. You just kept saying it until it became mine too. His gaze stayed steady on Tate now, not argumentative, not defensive, just present. That version of you didn't know anything about relationships or rules or fear of losing someone, Noah said quietly. You just reached for me in the simplest way you could. A breath. And I think part of you is still doing that now. He didn't say it as criticism. He said it like recognition. But the language has changed. His voice softened even more. Now it's fear instead of phonics. A pause. Control instead of trying. He let that sit without rushing to resolve it. Then gently. But I remember that version of you. The one who didn't try to own the connection. Only to say it badly, imperfectly, and keep saying it anyway. Noah. Noah looked at him for a long moment. And I don't think that part of you is gone. A quiet pause. I think it's just buried under everything you're afraid of losing. Do you remember, Tate said quietly, how I got my nickname? Noah hesitated. For a second he didn't answer at all, not because he didn't want to, but because his mind had already started searching and came up empty. I don't remember, he admitted gently, not clearly. There was no embarrassment in it, just honesty. Tate didn't rush him, he just nodded like he had expected that answer. So he filled in the gap. He explained it carefully, almost like he was trying to lay the memory down in front of Noah so he could see it from the outside. They were both very young then, so young that language itself wasn't fully stable yet, more something being experimented with than something fully learned. Noah had been working through phonics at the same time Tate was. And Tate had been struggling with speech sounds too, though not in a way anyone would have labeled clearly at the time. It was just harder for him. Certain sounds didn't come out cleanly, certain syllables didn't sit right in his mouth like they were slightly out of reach, no matter how hard he tried to shape them. But he kept trying. And Noah had noticed that trying. Not with judgment. Not with distance. With attention. Tate remembered it like this. Noah didn't correct him, he didn't laugh, he didn't step away or make it feel like something to be fixed. Instead Noah repeated him. Copied him. Matched him. Like he was learning the same language alongside him rather than above him. So when Tate tried to say Noah, it didn't always come out right. It bent slightly, softened by effort and small misfires in sound. And Noah, instead of insisting on perfect pronunciation, started responding to it. Tay-tay. Not as a joke. Not as teasing. But as a mirror. As recognition. As participation. Tate's version of Noah became Noe when he tried. And Noah's version of Tate became Tay-tay when he followed along. Neither of them understood it as anything significant at the time. It wasn't a moment they named or analyzed. It was just what happened when two kids were trying to reach each other through a language they didn't fully control yet. Tate glanced at Noah now. You weren't mocking me, Tate said. You were copying me like you were saying it with me. Noah stayed quiet through all of it, his expression slowly changing as the shape of the memory formed more clearly in his mind, not as a single scene but as fragments aligning for the first time. He exhaled softly. I didn't know that's what I was doing, he said at last. A pause. I just remember it feeling normal. His gaze stayed on Tate. Like your version of my name was just as valid as mine. 1 month later, December settled in properly, and Joey came back into the room just as Uncle Tim had the Christmas tree delivered. The place filled quickly with motion, boxes opening, ornaments being passed around, soft chatter as everyone took turns decorating. Tate ended up with the star. He unwrapped it carefully, turning it once in his hands before looking straight at Noah, already deciding where it belonged. He held it out to him without saying much. Noah accepted it with a small knowing smile. They both looked up at the top of the tree at the same time. Tate tried first, hands under Noah's waist, lifting him with a quiet grunt of effort. Got you, Tate said, determined. Noah gave a breathy laugh as he rose slightly, not quite. Tate adjusted, tried again, but even on his best effort it still wasn't enough. Joey watched them for a second, amused, then he stepped in. Move, Joey said lightly. Before Noah could argue. Joey scooped him up with ease, lifting him high enough that the star point was finally within reach. There, Joey said, that's better. Noah carefully placed the star at the very top of the tree, adjusting it until it sat straight and steady. From below, Tate looked up, a little exhale escaping him as he watched it settle. Joey lowered Noah back down. And once again, Joey said with a small grin, Tate's just not tall enough for star duty. A few quiet laughs spread through the room. Noah glanced over at Tate as his feet hit the ground again, the moment light and familiar. The tree finally finished the way it was supposed to be. Joey took Tate out for ice cream, the kind of simple, casual outing he did without overthinking it, just grabbing his keys, bumping Tate lightly on the shoulder and saying, "Come on, you're coming with me." The door closed behind them, leaving the house a little quieter than before. Noah stayed behind with Talia in the kitchen. The counter was already dusted with flour, a tray of cookies halfway prepped between them. The smell of vanilla and sugar hung warm in the air, the oven clicking softly as it preheated. Talia leaned over the bowl, licking a bit of dough off her finger before getting gently scolded by Noah with a half-smile. "Don't do that," Noah said, though there was no real bite to it. "I always do that," Talia replied, completely unbothered. Noah shook his head, laughing under his breath as he stirred the mix again. But even with the normal rhythm of it, cookies, conversation, the familiar noise of the house, his attention drifted in small gaps of silence. Tate wasn't here. It wasn't dramatic, nothing was wrong. Joey and Tim did this sometimes, pulling Tate along for errands, ice cream runs, quick drives to landmarks or places that didn't really need a reason. Still, Noah noticed it every time. The space. The quiet where Tate usually was. Talia nudged him lightly with her elbow. "You're staring at the oven as it owes you money." Noah blinked, coming back to the moment. "I'm not starring." "You are," she said. He gave a small, distracted smile, turning the tray slightly, just waiting for them to be done. Talia hummed like she didn't fully believe him, but let it go. Noah glanced toward the hallway for a second anyway, then back to the cookies, hands steadying the tray. "I miss him when he's gone," he admitted more quietly than he meant to. Talia didn't tease this time, she just nodded like she understood exactly what he meant. "Yeah," she said simply, "that happens." Talia smiled and pulled Noah into a hug, easy and familiar, like it didn't need any explanation. "You know how uncles and nephews are sometimes," she said softly. "They need time by themselves, that time between them is kind of sacred." Noah leaned into the hug a little, still holding the mixing spoon loosely in one hand as he listened. "Sometimes you go along, sometimes you don't," Talia continued. "It doesn't mean anything bad. I'm glad Joey and Tim think of you like another one of their nephews." She squeezed him gently. "You're my little boy too," she added with a warm smile. Then she leaned in and kissed his cheek. Noah froze for half a second, just long enough for his brain to register it, before his face went noticeably red. "Hey," he said automatically, but it came out quieter than he meant. Talia just laughed under her breath like she'd gotten exactly the reaction she expected, stepping back to stir the bowl like nothing had happened. Noah cleared his throat, looking down at the cookie dough like it had suddenly become very important to focus on. "We're going to burn these if you keep distracting me," he muttered, still red in the ears, trying to regain his composure as the kitchen filled back up with normal noise. Once the cookies were done and cooling on the rack, the kitchen had settled into a soft, warm quiet. Talia sat in the rocking chair near the counter and gently pulled Noah onto her lap like it was the most natural thing in the world. Noah didn't resist, he just shifted carefully, still a little warm from baking, hands resting loosely as he settled. Talia rocked him slowly, watching the cooling cookies for a moment before she spoke. "You know, honey," she said gently, "even though you're only 4 years old, you're kind of like another son to me." Noah stayed still listening. "Tate never really wants to spend time with me," she continued, almost casually like she was just stating something she'd accepted. "So in some ways, I end up being closer to you." She smiled softly, still rocking. Noah's expression shifted slightly, not dramatic but thoughtful, processing her words as he sat in her lap, the warmth of the kitchen and the slow rocking chair making everything feel slower than the conversation itself. Talia pulled Noah a little closer in the rocking chair, smiling widely. "Time for the kissy monster," she said playfully. No, no, Noah laughed, immediately covering his face and ears as he squirmed in her lap. Talia giggled and gently kissed his red cheeks instead. You're so dramatic, she teased warmly. Look at that little red face. Noah tried to twist away, laughing harder. Stop. Talia's kisses slowed down, still smiling, and lightly squeezed his cheeks instead in a playful way. There you go, she said, all cute and flushed. Noah kept laughing, settling back into her lap as the moment turned light and silly again. Since you can't have any of the fresh cookies, Talia said, smiling, why don't we go into the garage and see if I've got something frozen saved from summer? She took Noah's hand and led him out into the cool garage. Inside, she opened one of the freezers, rummaging for a moment before pulling out a tray of homemade popsicles. I found these in the summertime and was saving them for a nice day, she said. Want one? Noah nodded quickly. Yes, please. Talia smiled and handed him a green one. I think these are lime, maybe a little too much sugar, honestly. We'll find out. Noah carefully peeled it open and took a small bite, eyes widening a little at the cold sweetness. Talia leaned on the freezer door, watching him with an amused grin. Good. Noah nodded again, now happily distracted by the popsicle as the moment stayed light and simple. Noah's lips were bright green from the popsicle as he happily finished it, sitting back on the couch. Talia glanced over and smiled. Want to watch some TV? Noah nodded quickly and climbed up onto the couch, settling in as she turned on a cartoon. There we go, Talia said, setting the remote beside him. I'll be in the kitchen finishing up the cookies. Call me if you need anything. Noah shifted to get comfortable, eyes already fixed on the screen as the bright colors of the cartoon filled the room. Talia gave him a quick glance to make sure he was settled, then headed back toward the kitchen, leaving the room warm and quiet except for the TV. Talia walked back into the kitchen, glancing toward the living room as she moved. Noah was still on the couch watching the cartoon, the green popsicle slowly disappearing in his hand. He looked quieter than earlier, more withdrawn in the stillness of the house. She paused for a moment, watching him with a thoughtful expression. He gets quiet when Tate's not here, she said softly to herself. Probably just misses him. The house was unusually calm that week. Most of the relatives were out, Tim shopping with his wife, and Joey and Tate taking a trip to the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures on Wilshire BLVD. Talia turned back to her work, but her attention drifted back toward Noah every so often. He seemed like a child who was used to being around people, and it was natural for him to feel the absence when the ones he was closest to weren't around. I'm glad he feels safe here, she said quietly, mostly to herself. That's what matters. Then she returned to the counter, keeping an easy, watchful presence in the background while Noah stayed settled on the couch, absorbed in his cartoon. Talia had learned from Tate that Noah's home life wasn't always stable, and that he often spent a lot of time on his own because his mother worked long hours. It stayed in her mind when she saw him around the house, how comfortable he seemed when there were people nearby and how quiet he got when things slowed down. She glanced toward the living room where Noah was still watching TV and settled into the couch. He seems like a really sweet kid, she said softly, mostly to herself as she returned to her work in the kitchen. He's good to Tate, too. She shook her head slightly, not judgmental, just thoughtful. I can't imagine how much time he spends on his own, she added quietly. Then she refocused on the cookies, while still keeping a gentle eye on the living room, making sure he was comfortable and okay where he was. 2 weeks later, Uncle Tim offered to take Tate and Noah on a drive to the pizza factory on the west side of town. Come on, Tim said, grabbing his keys. It's actually pretty fun. You get to see how they make everything and you eat a lot more pizza than you probably should. Tate looked over at Noah. You up for that? Noah nodded immediately. Yeah. The drive over was relaxed, the kind of easy conversation that filled the car without needing much effort. Tim pointed out a few landmarks along the way, occasionally slipping in stories about places they passed. When they arrived, the factory was louder than Noah expected, warm, busy, and full of motion. Conveyor belts carried dough across stations, workers stretched and topped pizzas with practiced speed, and ovens hummed in steady heat. They were given a short tour first. A guide explained how the dough was made in large batches, how sauces were portioned, and how toppings were measured for consistency before everything went into massive ovens. Noah watched closely, fascinated by the rhythm of it all. Tate stayed close beside him, occasionally leaning in to point something out or ask a question, while Tim listened with his hands in his pockets, clearly amused by how seriously they were both taking it. After the tour, they were led into a tasting area where different slices were lined up: classic cheese, pepperoni, veggie, and a few specialty combinations. Tim clapped his hands together. "All right, official taste test, no overthinking it." Noah laughed a little and grabbed a slice, still watching the room like he was taking everything in. Tate nudged him lightly. "What do you think so far?" Noah swallowed a bite before answering, "It's better than I expected." Tim grinned. "That's the official factory endorsement then." The three of them settled into the easy rhythm of eating, talking, and watching the machinery through the glass. Just a simple day out, nothing complicated, just time together. A week after Christmas, Aunt Julie took Tate and Noah shopping at the Koreatown Plaza. The building was lively the moment they stepped inside, multiple levels filled with shops, bright signage in Korean and English, and the constant hum of conversation and footsteps. Escalators moved people between floors, and the smell of food drifted through the open space from the food court below. "All right," Julie said, smiling as she looked around. "We're doing this properly: walk, shop, eat, repeat." Tate glanced up at the different levels. "This place is huge." Noah nodded beside him, already looking curious as he took everything in. They started browsing through a few shops first: small clothing stores, stationery stalls, and displays of snacks and imported goods. Julie occasionally pointed things out, explaining what they were or suggesting something they should try. Eventually, they made their way down to the food court. Julie led them to a counter serving Korean in trays and ordered a mix of dishes so they could all share: rice bowls, dumplings, and a few seafood items to try. "Don't overthink it," she said as the trays arrived. "Just try everything once." Tate picked up his chopsticks first, eyeing the spread. "This smells good." Noah nodded and tried a bite, pausing for a second before reacting. "That's actually really good." Julie smiled as she watched them. "See, that's the point." They ate together at a small table near the railing overlooking the lower level, the mall buzzing beneath them. People came and went, but their little corner stayed calm: just conversation, food, and the easy rhythm of a shared outing. Tate leaned back slightly after a while, satisfied. "We should come here again." Julie laughed. "That's the idea. I'm building repeat customers." Uncle Tim and Aunt Julia lived in New York City, a world away from Joey, who was still in Paris, buried beneath stacks of books and the endless demands of university life. His days disappeared into lecture halls, libraries, and quiet cafes where he drafted papers late into the night, determined to build a future in academia before he thought about marriage or children. The family had changed after Aunt Lydia died. Tate slowly realized how small his family had become. He had only one aunt left and two uncles. There were no cousins to chase through the backyard at family gatherings, no children his own age to whisper secrets with during holidays or compete against in games. Tim and Julia had always hoped for children of their own, but despite years of trying, they had never been able to have them. Joey, still only in his early 20s, wasn't married yet and had no children either. Tate was the only child of his generation in the family. Whenever the family gathered, every conversation eventually circled back to him. Every birthday, every holiday, every visit, all of the adults' attention settled on Tate. There simply wasn't anyone else for them to fuss over. Even so, there was a strong sense of connection between them. Group calls stayed active, visits happened often, and there was always someone planning the next visit or reunion somewhere across the country. Tate was part of the most central branches, so he often ended up hosting when relatives came through California. It wasn't a small family by any means, but it functioned like a wide network: separate homes, different states, same thread holding it together. Terrence was considered the patriarch of Tate's family, the central figure who held the different branches together across states. As his eldest and only son, Tate was often spoken about within the family as the next in line in a traditional sense, not in any official title yet, but in the way large families sometimes naturally organize themselves around legacy and responsibility. Because of that, people tended to look at Tate as someone who would eventually take on a leadership role within the family structure after Terence. It wasn't just about money or inheritance, but about continuing connections between relatives spread across New York City and Paris. When Terence eventually passed away, Tate would inherit a significant portion of the family's assets and responsibilities. That included financial stability, property interests, and the informal expectation that he would help maintain ties across the family network. But for now, Terence was still very much alive and Tate was simply navigating his place in a large, complex family, still learning how much weight, if any, he actually wanted to carry when that time ever came. A great deal of expectation rested on Tate as Terence's only son. Within the family, people often assumed he would step into a high-profile role someday, maybe business leadership, maybe even politics or some combination of both. It wasn't a formal plan written anywhere, but it was the kind of future others quietly projected onto him because of his family name and influence. Terence, for his part, wanted what he believed was best for his son: stability, success, and a life that matched the family's long-standing reputation. But that didn't always align perfectly with Tate's personal choices or relationships. At times, it created tension between expectation and independence, especially when Tate gravitated toward people outside the family's usual social circles. Still, Terence's priority remained his son's well-being, even when he didn't fully understand every decision Tate made. Tate and Noah came from very different backgrounds, different family expectations, different assumptions about what their futures were supposed to look like. On paper, they weren't the kind of people who would naturally end up moving through the same spaces. But none of that mattered much to Tate in practice. Something about Noah had stayed with him from the beginning in a way nothing else really had. Through school, through meeting new people, through all the pressure and noise of his family's expectations, no one ever made him feel quite the same way Noah did: steady, real, grounding in a way he didn't always know how to explain. So over time, Tate naturally kept Noah close. Not as something performative or defined by status, but as someone he trusted, someone he confided in when things got overwhelming or complicated. Noah became the person Tate gravitated toward when everything else felt too loud or too scripted. And even if other people around them didn't always understand the closeness, it was clear to Tate: Noah wasn't replaceable in his life. By the time Noah had been around the Blue family for years, everyone had grown used to his presence in the house. What started as frequent visits eventually became a steady routine: after school, weekends, holidays, always arranged with his mother and dependent on schedules and permission. Over time, he became a familiar part of daily life there. Because Noah's mother often worked long hours, there were stretches where he spent more time at the Blue house than at home, as agreed upon by the adults to make sure he was supervised and cared for. It wasn't about him being kept anywhere, it was about ensuring he wasn't alone and had consistent support. Inside the household, he and Tate naturally grew close. Their friendship became something stable and constant in Tate's life, something he relied on emotionally even as everything around them, family expectations, school, future plans, kept changing. To the rest of the family, Noah wasn't temporary in the sense of importance, but his place was always understood within the proper boundaries: a child with a home and a parent and a second environment where he was welcomed, safe, and cared for when needed. Noah ended up being especially close with Uncle Tim and Uncle Joey. Tim had a calm, easy way about him. He didn't talk over Noah, just included him in whatever was going on, whether it was errands, small trips, or simple conversations in the kitchen. Joey was more playful, always willing to joke around or take him along for casual outings, the kind that didn't feel planned so much as spontaneous. Noah still liked spending time with Tate most of all, but being around the wider family gave him a sense of routine and belonging he didn't really have anywhere else. At first, Noah struggled to remember everyone, but the family itself was welcoming enough that it didn't matter much. People introduced themselves, repeated names without fuss, and slowly it all became part of the background rhythm of being around them. What mattered most to Noah wasn't who everyone was individually, but the fact that when he was there, he was included, spoken to, acknowledged, and treated as part of the everyday flow of the household, especially by the adults he trusted most. In the Blue family, names often carried history. Each generation tended to name children after earlier relatives, sometimes combining first names or middle names from different branches of the family tree. It wasn't unusual for someone to be named after two different ancestors at once, as a way of honoring both sides of the lineage. Tate's own names, Tatum and Joseph, followed that tradition in a subtle way, drawn from family names connected to Uncle Joey's side of the family. It reflected how intertwined the branches of the family had become over time, with names circulating and being reused across generations. Terrence's father, too, had been named Terrence Timothy in that same tradition, carrying forward two names from his own father's generation. In the Blue family, naming wasn't just personal, it was symbolic, a way of keeping memory and legacy active within each new child. Because of that, the family tree could feel dense to outsiders, with repeated names and familiar patterns showing up across different states and generations. But for them, it created a sense of continuity, like each new child was another link in something already long established. Tate had known about the trust for as long as he could remember, though the details only became clear as he grew older. Beginning on his 10th birthday, an annual payment was deposited into a trust established in his name. He could spend it freely. The money not yet available was managed on his behalf, quietly accumulating alongside the family's investments, properties, and other assets. The real inheritance came later. When Tate turned 18, he would receive the first portion of his inheritance, a substantial share of the family's wealth, including money, investments, and an interest in various properties. The second and much larger installment would not be released until he turned 22, and only if he had successfully completed university, a condition his family had written into the trust decades earlier. To them, education was not merely encouraged, it was expected. The figures involved were enormous. Noah caught glimpses of them only by accident, enough to realize that the sums were far beyond anything he could imagine. He never asked questions. It wasn't his place, and Tate never volunteered the information. Their relationship had never revolved around bank accounts or inheritances. Until the day he came into full possession of his inheritance, Tate continued living within the structure of his family's wealth and expectations. The sprawling house, the private schools, the careful planning for his future, and the quiet assumption that he would someday shoulder the family's responsibilities were simply the world he had always known. Comfort and privilege surrounded him, even if they were rarely the things occupying his thoughts. Because of that environment, he had access to high-end clothing, accessories, and a lifestyle that reflected his family's status. Most people around him assumed he would eventually transition into elite private institutions that matched his background. But Tate made a different choice. He stayed in public school. It wasn't about status or expectation, it was about proximity to Noah. Whatever advantages or assumptions came with his family's name, they mattered less to him than being able to see and spend time with him regularly. Noah, meanwhile, attended public school because that was what his family situation allowed. Private schooling simply wasn't an option financially, and that shaped his day-to-day reality in a very different way from Tate's. Despite those differences, the two of them ended up in the same place each day, which became the most important thing to Tate, far more than the expectations attached to his family name or future inheritance. Tate liked being close to Noah not just because of their relationship, but because it gave him something he didn't get anywhere else: a sense of everyday life outside of his own world. Coming from a wealthy, high-expectation family, Tate had grown up surrounded by comfort and structure that felt normal to him, even if it was far removed from how most people lived. Being around Noah opened his eyes to a different pace of life, simpler routines, different concerns, and a kind of groundedness that didn't revolve around status or money. Noah, without really trying to, showed Tate what ordinary life looked like in practice. How people spoke to each other casually, how small kindnesses mattered, how people made the most of what they had. He was polite, steady, and naturally considerate with everyone, and Tate noticed that more than anything. Over time, that influence shaped how Tate saw other people. It helped him appreciate what he had without assuming it made him better than anyone else. Instead of taking his circumstances for granted, he became more aware of differences in experience and more thoughtful about how he treated others because of it. In that way, Noah became an important part of Tate's development, not by changing who he was but by giving him a reference point outside of privilege, something real, human, and everyday that helped keep him grounded as he grew up. When Tate and Noah were 6, Tate had gone shopping with him while Talia picked up a few things for the start of school. The store was bright and quiet in that expensive, carefully arranged way, rows of neatly hung clothes, soft lighting, and attendants who moved without rushing. Tate was in the fitting area trying on jackets, turning in the mirror while someone checked sizes for him. Noah wandered nearby, looking through a rack on his own. At one point he pulled out a coat and held it up against himself. It was thick, well-made, and deep green, something that caught his attention immediately. He didn't say much, just looked at it for a long moment. Tate noticed. "You like that one?" he asked, stepping closer. Noah nodded. "It's warm." Tate glanced at it, then back at Noah. "Try it on." Noah slipped his arms through the sleeves. It fit a little big, but it wrapped around him comfortably, soft and heavy in a way that made him pause. He looked up at Tate. Tate didn't hesitate for long, he simply nodded. "Keep it," he said. Noah blinked. "Really?" "Yeah," Tate replied like it wasn't a big decision at all. "It looks good on you." Noah looked down at the Ralph Lauren coat again, fingers curling into the sleeves. The price was more than Noah could ever afford. The coat cost $2,000. The price didn't matter to him in the way it might have to adults around them. What mattered in that moment was that it was warm, it was green, and Tate had said yes without making it complicated. So Noah kept it. And from then on, whenever the mornings were cold enough to notice, he wore it, because it had become something simple and steady between them, tied less to money and more to the habit of Tate noticing things Noah liked. Tate became noticeably more open and expressive around Noah over time. He was more relaxed in how he interacted, less guarded. More willing to engage in conversation and shared activities. With Noah specifically, he showed a level of comfort that wasn't as visible in other parts of his life. Their relationship often came out in simple, everyday ways, spending time together, sharing interests, laughing over small things, and sticking close during outings or family gatherings. Tate was attentive to Noah's moods and interests, and Noah responded easily to Tate's presence. Over time, that consistency built a strong bond between them, one based on familiarity, trust, and shared routines rather than anything complicated or performative. It became one of the most stable relationships in Tate's life as he grew up, shaping how he related to others in a more grounded and thoughtful way. I was now 18, a grown boy on the threshold of adulthood. I returned to the home where I was born. The trailer is quiet when I get home, too quiet. The screen door creaks the way it always does and I step inside, dropping my knapsack by the door. The air smells stale, beer and old upholstery and something faintly sweet that's gone wrong. My mom is sprawled on the couch, one arm hanging off the side, the TV on but muted. She's dead to the world, mouth slightly open. An empty bottle is on the floor within reach. She doesn't stir when I walk past. She never does. She doesn't know where I slept last night. She doesn't know it's my birthday. She hasn't known for the last 3 years, not really. I stopped reminding her after the second time she forgot. It felt worse to watch her realize, late, sloppy, guilty, than to just let the day pass unnoticed. I shower, change, and don't bother leaving a note. There's nothing to say, I'm just passing through this place, same as always. I head back toward Tate's house when it's 7 that evening, heart thudding with dread and hope tangled together so tightly I can't tell which one is winning. Because tonight is supposed to be unforgettable, and I'm terrified that it already is for all the wrong reasons. I should have moved on from Tate when I was 15 and our relationship changed. We were so close that it felt impossible to separate ourselves, yet I didn't really know what we were or what we were becoming. By 15, I already knew that Tate wouldn't ever give me what I needed. He wasn't capable of being anything beyond the limitations of his upbringing and his homophobic mindset. He couldn't help it, it was the 1980s and he was a straight, conservative, and wealthy teenager. He believed in the propaganda and nonsense that had been force-fed to his generation, and that shaped him more than I ever realized at the time. I wish I had left. I could have avoided so much pain, discomfort, and anxiety. But I couldn't tell Tate the truth, it would have destroyed what we had. And let's be honest, if I had walked away back to the trailer where I lived with my mother, I wouldn't have had access to the opportunities he and his family gave me.
I wouldn't have been able to go to a great college or have a semi-decent surrogate family or enjoy the finer things in life. Maybe I put up with too much in order to gain something I wasn't fully using. I actually loved Tate and his family more than I loved my own mother, but maybe I should have created boundaries, decided for myself what was acceptable, learned to hold a higher standard, to say no sometimes. That was around the time everything about Tate started to change. It began quietly, almost small enough to ignore. At the same time he started pulling away from everyone else. Teachers noticed it first. Tate had always been disciplined, almost frighteningly composed. Good grades, perfect posture, polite answers. The kind of student adults brag about. That version of him disappeared. He started swearing under his breath when teachers corrected him. Not loudly, never enough to get in serious trouble, but enough that people noticed. When authority figures tried to challenge him, his eyes would go cold in a way that made them uncomfortable. He didn't care anymore, or maybe he cared too much. I watched him one afternoon when a teacher told him to stay after class. Instead of apologizing like the old Tate would have, he leaned back in his chair and muttered something sharp in French. The teacher didn't understand the words, but I did. It wasn't polite. That kind of behavior spread into everything else. His appearance changed, too. Tate had always been handsome in that effortless way rich kids sometimes are: clean shirts, simple jackets, expensive clothes that didn't look expensive. But suddenly he started dressing differently. Sharper, more mature styles, more intentional, slim dark trousers, tailored jackets, crisp white shirts open at the collar. Sometimes, long coats made him look older than he was. He carried himself like someone walking down a runway rather than through a high school hallway. Girls stared, boys noticed too. He didn't seem to care about either, except when it came to me. With everyone else he became distant, almost detached, like he was observing life from behind glass. Conversations bored him, parties annoyed him, teachers irritated him, but when it was just the two of us walking home, sitting together in the library, lying in our bed at night, he was still there, still sharp, still watchful, still holding me closer than anyone else. Sometimes I wondered if the seizures had changed something in Tate, not just physically but deeper, like something inside him had cracked open and the person that stepped out afterward didn't feel the need to pretend anymore. The world started seeing Tate as difficult, unpredictable, even arrogant, but I saw something different. I saw the way his hand searched for mine in the dark when nightmares came. I saw the tension in his shoulders when his body betrayed him. I saw the quiet way he pulled me closer against his chest like I was the only steady thing left in his world. Everyone else said Tate had changed. But when he held me at night, breathing slow against my hair, whispering half words in French as he drifted back to sleep, I knew one thing hadn't changed at all. No matter how distant he became from the rest of the world, he never pushed me away. We became closer the older we became, especially after his 15th birthday. People would term Tate's behavior as clingy and childlike. Not long after the seizures started, the anger came. It didn't look like the kind of anger most people expected from Tate. He was the type to pick fights with other students or shove someone in the hallway. His fury seemed to turn toward things that couldn't fight back. Inanimate objects became his enemies. The target was his Uncle Joey's old red truck. I saw it happen one afternoon in the driveway. The door stuck when he tried to shut it, bouncing slightly instead of clicking closed. For most people it would have been a small annoyance. For Tate it was like the world had insulted him. "Piece of shit," he snapped, slamming the door again. The latch still didn't catch. His face went tight, eyes dark with frustration. The door bounced again. That's when he really lost it. "Goddamn stupid cunt door," he barked, kicking it again. "You useless twat." I stood a few feet away, stunned. Tate had always had a sharp mouth, but lately the words coming out of him were different, sharper, dirtier. Half of them I'd never even heard before. He swore constantly now. Not just the usual stuff everyone said at school. Tate's vocabulary had expanded into a strange collection of insults that sounded almost theatrical. Sometimes English, sometimes French, sometimes combinations I didn't even recognize. Eventually, the door finally shut. Tate stood there breathing hard, staring at it as it had personally betrayed him. Then he noticed me watching. For a moment, the anger disappeared from his face, replaced with something quieter. "You didn't hear that," he muttered. "I heard all of it," I said. He rubbed the back of his neck, embarrassed but still irritated. "It's a stupid door." "It's a door," I said carefully. He exhaled through his nose, then glanced at me with a faint, crooked smirk. "Still a cunt." I shook my head, half shocked and half amused. Tate was changing, everyone could see it. But strangely, when the anger burned itself out, when the swearing stopped and the tension drained from his shoulders, he always drifted back toward me like I was the only person who didn't make him feel like he had to hold everything together. The world got the explosions, I got the silence afterward. I was 15 when I first noticed something about Tate that unsettled me. It happened slowly in passing comments at first. We were walking home from school one afternoon when a couple of older boys passed us on the sidewalk. They were holding hands and laughing about something one of them had said. Tate's mood shifted instantly. He watched them walk by with a look I couldn't quite read, something sharp, something tense. "Chomos," he muttered under his breath. I frowned. "What?" He didn't look at me. "Nothing." "No, you said something," I pressed. "What's a chomo?" Tate kicked a loose pebble on the sidewalk, sending it skittering ahead of us. "Just idiots," but it kept happening. If two boys got too close to each other in the locker room, Tate's jaw tightened. If someone joked about a guy being gay, Tate didn't laugh the way everyone else did. His reaction was colder, harsher. "Fucking chomos," he said once under his breath. I had no idea what the word meant, but the way he said it made it clear it wasn't something kind. It confused me more than anything else. At night we still slept the same way we always had, me with my head on his chest, his arms wrapped tight around me like he didn't want the world getting anywhere near me, his fingers laced with mine while we slept. But during the day he acted like people who loved the same sex or demonstrated physical affection were something disgusting. The contradiction twisted my brain. One night I finally asked, "Tate." He made a sleepy noise beside me. "Yeah. Why do you hate gay people?" His body went still. "I hate them, I loathe them," he said flatly. "You call them chomos." Silence filled the room for a long moment. "Just something people say," he muttered. "What does it mean?" Another long pause. "Doesn't matter," he said finally, "just forget it." But I couldn't forget it. The way he said the word carried too much anger, too much resentment for it to be nothing. I wondered where it came from. Tate wasn't the kind of person who followed what other people thought. He didn't care about gossip, school rules, or authority figures. So hearing him echo something hateful like that felt strange, almost out of character. Sometimes I wondered if it came from his father. Sometimes I wondered if it came from something deeper. But every time I tried to ask, Tate shut the conversation down quickly, like it was a door he refused to open. And yet when the lights went out and the house went quiet, he still pulled me closer, resting his chin on my head while we slept. Whatever anger he carried during the day, it never pushed me out of bed. Noah spent the afternoon drifting through the quiet hum of the cinema, an issy in one hand and a tub of popcorn in the other. The theater was sparsely populated, the occasional laugh or cough echoing faintly in the dark. He didn't mind. He liked being alone, liked being able to watch without anyone asking questions or reading the emotions he didn't know how to name. He settled into the worn red seat, eyes fixed on the screen. Lucas, the boy on film, moving clumsily through a world of unspoken feelings, of longing and quiet desperation, mirrored more than Noah wanted to admit. He'd seen the movie a dozen times, but it still pulled at something raw inside him. The way Lucas's heart twisted for someone who couldn't, or wouldn't, return it made Noah's chest ache. Popcorn crunched under his fingers, sugary and salty at once, and the cold of the issy bit at his tongue, yet he didn't care. The sweetness, the cold, the mundane ritual of the snacks grounded him in a small way, but it couldn't distract him from the familiar ache. Why is it always like this, he thought. Why do the people I care about never show it back the way I want them to? He sank further into the seat, the screen glowing across his face. Every glance between Lucas and his friend made his stomach twist, made him wonder why desire, even platonic desire, had to be so complicated, so unspoken, so impossible to reach. Noah's eyes watered slightly and he wiped at them with the back of his hand, hopping. No one noticed. He wasn't crying for the movie. He was crying for himself, for the small, private longing he carried in his chest, the kind that could never be shared, the kind that hurt precisely because it was both so simple and so impossible. As the credits rolled, he sat quietly, finishing his issy, picking at the popcorn with distracted fingers. The theater emptied around him, but he didn't move. He lingered in the dim light, thinking about love, friendship, longing, and the cruel distance between what he felt and what the world or Tate would allow him to have. He knew deep down that watching Lucas ache for someone unreachable wasn't just entertainment, it was a mirror. And he wasn't sure if he wanted to look away. That's the thought that hits me as I walk toward his house at 7 in the evening, hands shoved in my jacket pockets, heart already aching like it's bracing for impact. And I clung to that space like it was proof I could survive without him, like it was practice for letting go. But then he included me in every moment of his life. Wrestling, music, late nights, sleepovers. Tate never really had a crush, never fallen for a girl. I told myself that meant something. I let myself believe it bought me time. I head back toward Tate's house when it's time, heart thudding with dread and hope tangled together so tightly I can't tell which one is winning. Because tonight is supposed to be unforgettable, and I'm terrified that it already is for all the wrong reasons. I round the corner onto a street and stop dead. Cars, so many cars. They're lined up bumper to bumper, stretching farther than I can see, beat-up sedans, shiny imports, trucks with college stickers, music thumping from open windows. The street looks nothing like it ever has, not even on holidays. My stomach drops. Oh, he really did it. I want to be anywhere but here. The party waits, but I have to attend. I stand there for a second, overwhelmed, before forcing myself forward. The front door is wide open, light and noise spilling out onto the lawn. The bass from inside rattles my ribs before I even cross the threshold. The moment I step in, chaos erupts. Noah. Happy birthday. 18 man. Birthday boy. Hands clap my back. Someone shoves a cup into my hand. Another person pats my shoulder in a congratulatory fashion, wishing me a special day. The house is packed, wall-to-wall bodies, laughter, music, the smell of beer and perfume and sweat. I barely have time to process it before Tate appears at my side. There he is, black hair styled instead of slept on, clean shirt, bright, easy smile. His hand comes down on my shoulder automatically, grounding and familiar, like this is exactly where it belongs. You made it, he says, loud enough to cut through the noise. Yeah, I managed. You went big. He laughs. You only turn 18 once. People keep coming up to us, interrupting, hugging me, shouting congratulations. Tate keeps his hand on my shoulder through all of it, like he's anchoring me in the storm, like he's proud. Like this is our moment, and for a few dangerous seconds I let myself pretend. I let myself believe this party is about me and not about spectacle. That his hand is there because I matter, not because he's the host. That's when he leans in to shout something in my ear. It's just us, like it's always been. Uncle Joey is there with a camera, filming the chaos and watching everyone to make sure the teens behave. The house pulses with life around us, music pounding, laughter echoing off the walls. Tate throws an arm around my shoulders now, pulling me closer as someone snaps a picture. He's grinning, enjoying every second of his best. Another thing about Tate changed when we were around 15. Before that, photographs had never been a big deal. School pictures, family events, random snapshots. Tate didn't exactly enjoy them, but he tolerated them the way most people did. Then one year he just stopped completely. The first time I noticed it was at a small school event. Someone lifted a camera toward our group, and before the flash even went off, Tate stepped out of frame so quickly it was like a reflex. Hey, the guy holding the camera said, get back in. Tate didn't move. Take the damn picture without me, he muttered. I thought it was just a bad mood, but it wasn't. From that point on, Tate refused every photograph. If someone aimed a camera his way, he would instantly turn his back. Not casually either, it was sharp, immediate, almost defensive. One time a girl tried to snap a picture of him in the hallway. He spun around so fast she nearly dropped the camera. Don't, he snapped. She blinked. Relax, it's just a photo. Twat, he muttered, already walking away. It wasn't just cameras either. At his house there were framed photographs on the walls like in any normal family home, old holidays, school portraits and family gatherings, but Tate never looked at them, not even accidentally. When we sat in the living room near the television, there were photo albums stacked on the side table. I'd flip through them sometimes out of boredom. Tate never did if I opened one. His eyes drifted somewhere else, the wall, the floor, the window, anywhere except the pictures. One night I asked his mom about it while Tate was upstairs. He's always been a little camera shy, she said lightly. Some people just don't like attention. I almost laughed. Camera shy, that was the biggest load of bullshit I'd ever heard. Tate wasn't shy about anything. He'd swear at teachers, curse at truck doors, or stare down people twice his size without blinking. Fear and embarrassment weren't things he seemed capable of feeling. So the idea that cameras scared him didn't make sense. It had to be something else. One afternoon I tried to test it. I held up my camera and pointed it toward him while we were sitting on the couch. Tate grabbed it roughly out of my hands and broke it on the floor. The reaction was instant. Tate stood up so fast the cushion bounced. Don't, he said sharply. I'm not even taking it, I told him. Don't point it at me. His voice wasn't angry the way it usually was when he cursed at people. It was tighter than that, controlled, like he was holding something back. I lowered the camera slowly. Why, I asked.